Hello, Love Goddess. In today's episode, I am teaching you to be selfish. You're gonna think, oh my God, what is this girl talking about? The reason why this would come up as a knee jerk reaction is because the society has implanted into our brain from our early childhood that being selfish is not okay, and that selfish is a negative word, and that we should by all means try to avoid being selfish because apparently all of us need to be selfless. Selfless. Just let that sink in. Selfless, less of themselves, lack of themselves. No, this is not the truth. This is not how the universe intended to be, and the only rules from the society that you have learned to acquire is showing you that, the society is selfish, that you have to have less of yourself so you can give that part of yourself to the society. For what purpose? Right? Just like taxes. Everyone hates paying taxes, like, oh, my money going to this thing that I never approved, I'm okay with, right? So, let's talk about the word selfish, because I want to train you to think of this word in a better way. And even though I'm not going to be able to remove the negative coloring that society has created, I'm still yet trying to find a good way for us to talk about this. And everything that I have tried and tested, all of that has negative connotation about it. Self-centered, self-something. No wonder we as a society have the mental problems, because the people around us and everything around us is telling us that it's not okay to be focused on yourself. And that's why we have self-love problems, because everything from early childhood we are learning is telling us that it's not okay to love ourselves. I want for you to look at the word selfish as the word self-love. And your self-love only comes from putting your attention and your focus onto what is it that's coming up for you, what's important for you, what feelings coming up for you, and honoring those feelings. And I do believe that somewhere back long time ago, when the entire patriarchal culture was created, the seeds of being selfish and the negative coloring was put into the word then. And honestly, from her history, there's a term called, well, I actually don't know the term, but there's a thing, and if you know the term, let me know. There is a thing that's happening that when we change the words and the meaning of the words, everything changes about how we see life, how we live life, about the philosophy. Words are super important. And so every time new language, new everything, right? We erase the old language, we erase the old alphabet, and it has been done multiple times throughout history, and rather recently, right? We erase the meaning of words from what our ancestors really implied and put into the words. And what our ancestors have put into the words are codes and codes on top of codes on top of codes. And the roots, the origin of those words, if you start digging into the meaning and the ancient roots of the words, you will start really understanding the true essence of life, the philosophy, right? And there's so many different layers that our ancestors have put and coded into original language and the words. And then these words have been rewritten, changed, modified through the ages, through the history, through laws where they prevented to use certain words and declared the new language, the new calendars, the new everything. So we could forget. So we forget the ancestral roots of what's true. That's how they formed the new culture, the new society. That's how patriarchal culture have been implanted beyond people's will and to their knowledge, beyond their knowledge. Right? And so the talk is not about that. The talk about the proper way to be selfish. The proper way to be selfish. And while I'm still looking for that perfect word that can describe this word, and if you know it, please give me ideas on what word to use, because I would love to hear from you. I am on a search to find this perfect word that reflects that. The word selfish. So if you even look in the dictionary, and I have pulled out my phone here, it's the first thing it says when I put in the word selfish is a person, action, or motive lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. So there is so much wrong with this definition. Let's unpack it. So the word selfish is really self-pursued, what is good for the self, listening to the self, listening to the inner self. And when you are listening to the inner self, you receive guidance from that inner self because you're going to feel. That's how you move through life. That's your core basic rule to life one-on-one is follow your heart. Follow your soul, follow how it feels, follow the pleasure. All of that are talking of the same thing. When you're following the pleasure, you're following what feels good. When you're following the heart, you're following what feels good. When you follow your inner guidance, you are following what feels good. What feels good is your guide. What feels good is your guidance system. And believe me when I say everyone is selfish, and because nature intended for us to be that way. There is nothing wrong with it. There's everything right with it. And we are intended to follow what feels good for us. That is how you move through life. That is how you follow your inner guidance. And you have that internal checker that will tell you that this is not good and this is bad and this is amazing and this is where I need to be going. And by following that inner feeling of good, your path is laid out for you. When you following what doesn't feel right and you feel like about it, and then you justify it with logic, but my mom told me I should be a lawyer, but I hate all of that. I don't want to be a lawyer, but my mom said I'm gonna make $1 million, yada yada yada. And, you follow the logic, you follow what other people tell you, because majority of people looking for their guidance and their validation from outside sources instead of looking from within. So when they follow that outside guidance, they get crocked in life, right? They get depression, they commit suicide because they haven't been following their own path of what feels good, right? And so if you have that inner guidance, what feels good is where you need to go, right? I don't want to be a lawyer, but I want to be a painter or an artist, right? So follow that, and it's going to lead you to where you want to go. And don't worry about how the money is going to come to you, because it will, because it's not up to you. It's up to the universe to provide for you. You're just a little child that follows the pleasure in the game. Right? So following the pleasure is the core principle of how you live life, how you using your internal guidance in this whole process. Now, let's go back to our definition of the word selfish. I'm going to read it again. Lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit of pleasure. So when we remove words that can't identify the proper meaning of the word, we'll literally remove those emotions and the philosophies out of our experience. Do you see how that works? They removed the positive word for selfish. We now feel so guilty because the word does not exist for this term. That is why we're going to use this word and we're going to rewrite the meaning for it, right? So what's wrong with this definition is that they are showing that lacking consideration for others is a negative thing. It is. By being selfish, you don't need to lack consideration for others. You still can feel good and be a good person and have a big heart and help the homeless and do this and that. And you can still have this big mission, yet you still follow your own path, your own guidance, your own pleasure of what feels good, your own truth. Because the way you're going to determine your own truth is through your inner checker of what feels good. So everything is wrong with this definition because it tells us that we have to lack consideration for others, and we don't. We don't. You can still be selfish and have amazing consideration for others and love others and act out of love with kind heart and with the belief and goodness for all. And because that is how the universe is intended for the life to be, the goodness for all. And even though you might not see the way, they see the way, and they show you the way, and they show you the way through giving that. And anyway, lacking consideration for others, if you check that across your inner checker, what category does it fill in? Does it fill in feeling good, or does it fill in feeling bad? And as most of you will tell, it fills in feeling bad category. That's your checker. That's not correct, right? That's not correct. Lacking consideration for others is not a good thing to pursue, right? So that's your inner checker. You follow your own damn guidance based on that definition to identify that you don't need to lack consideration for others, but yet still be selfish and follow what is good for the self, what feels good for the self, follow the pleasure of the self, right? Another definition I pulled out is definition of what narcissism is. And I'm going to read that definition as well. So narcissism is personality qualities include thinking very highly of oneself, needing admiration, believing others are inferior, and lacking empathy for others. So obviously all of that is very negative, right? So why am I bringing this definition up? Because it is the opposite. It is the opposite of what feels good, right? When you're selfish, so selfish and narcissist are two completely different things. Selfish means following your own self and your self-guidance, where narcissism, implies that you are putting yourself over others. Where the word selfish implies you are checking that across your, against your inner checker, and lacking consideration for others falls into the bad category, right? Thinking very highly of yourself against other people falls in a bad category. I'm literally breaking down, inner guidance 101 here. Needing admiration. There's nothing bad about that. Needing admiration. Everyone craves admiration. So, that's good. Why is this as a negative description for narcissism? Why is this a negative description for narcissism? Believing others are inferior. All right, boom. Falling into the bad category. Your inner cross-checker telling you, you are not bigger or better than the other person, and that creates more separation. We're going into spirituality training here, right? So you are literally one, and you came from one source. You are one, and, by living in the material world, we have egos, we have separation, and that is the only way you would put yourself over anyone else, right? And lacking empathy for others is going against everything that we just talked to. So the word selfish does not mean you're a narcissist. It does not mean that you lack consideration for others, right? But it means that you are following your inner checker, and you're following your guidance, and you're following your pleasure. You know, this subject is rather close to my heart, simply because when I was growing up and, I was a rebel and stubborn child, and like I still did what Katya wanted to do, right? And so my mom would always tell me, you're so selfish, or you are ego-centered. Like, to me, I'm an innocent child. I don't even know what that means. And from her, the way she was saying it to me, I felt offended. I felt that I did something wrong. Like, I felt that, there's something wrong with me and I shouldn't be doing this, right? So a lot of negative thoughts came from me. But then I was like, I'm just following my fun and guidance and my own path and what feels good. And like, why are you blaming me? That, in my, that's my inner conflicts back when I was a teenager, or maybe like 12, 13, my inner conflict was that, why is my mom calling me selfish when I'm just like doing what feels good, following my own path, and honestly, like the real question here, and if you listen to Abraham Hicks, which I do, you will know that if you are not selfish, other people are. And people who are telling you that you are selfish are the ones who want for you to be selfless for them, so then they are selfish, right? So they want that of you for themselves. They want that of you for themselves. You have my permission to follow your pleasure, to follow your inner guidance, to follow what feels good, to drop any outside projections of that, to drop anyone's comments, to really know and compare it against your own inner checker, your own value checker, your own inner guidance. That is why you have it, and that is what you follow. Follow the pleasure, and that is exactly what I'm teaching you here in the Love Goddess Academy, what I'm teaching you with the Love Goddess philosophy overall. Follow your pleasure, you will find your light, you will find your turn on.